You gotta put it up on the mic. Yeah, man.
Definitely good Irrespective of person, it will be nice for them to stand with.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Probably
You
get a
can
little
bounce it out. You
sideways.
can bounce it out a little bit as well.
They can curve it out a little down there.
Ready. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Eves, the chairman of Fulton County Government. I want to thank all of you for being here. Today you have with me, you see behind me and with me, a diverse assembly of law enforcement personnel as well as members of our faith-based community who are here as a united front to not only express our concern and our grief and our sorrow about what's happened over the past several days with the loss of life. We also want to acknowledge that there is a certain degree of frustration and angst that's a part of our community. But the most important thing we want to stress today is that our law enforcement community, they're human beings, they're men and women who display acts of bravery, courage, and if it were not for our law enforcement community, we would not be as vibrant as a community, as a city, and as a county, as a state, and as a nation as we are. I'm here to thank our police chief and our personnel for all they're doing. We think that Fulton County is doing a lot of great things in terms of being a diverse workforce, a diverse police force, doing a lot of community policing, and we hope that we can set a positive tone in terms of better parity and uniformity across the county. We have 14 municipalities, and it doesn't serve us well if one entity is doing the right thing and others are not doing as much as they can. So we hopefully will be setting a positive tone. We also recognize that our law enforcement community, we can't be as successful as we are or can be without partners. And so again, we have members of our Muslim and Christian and Jewish communities, among others, who are going to have dialogue. And so I'm very, very pleased to have with us, along with Chief Stiles and his team, we have Iman Jabbar from the Al Farouk Mosque, as well as Pastor Frederick Russell, who's the senior pastor of the Berean Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Atlanta. So again, Chief Stiles has been in office, has been chief for about a year. He's going to share with you some of the things that we're doing. And before Chief comes forward, I want to stress to those people in our communities who are concerned, I'm going to have an open door policy. I'm willing to listen and to do all that I can as chairman of Fulton County to affect change so that we can have even better outcomes in our community in terms of public safety and law enforcement. So without further delay, Chief Gary Stiles.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you all for being here today. And most importantly, I want to thank the members of the faith-based community and members of the public that are here today, as well as my officers. These are tough times. I think we've all seen that. They are tough times. But I want to stress that the Fulton County Police Department and law enforcement in general across this country is committed to doing what they are sworn and trained to do, and that's uphold the order and laws of this country while treating everybody in a professional and equal and just manner. I can't speak for the instances where this goes wrong. I'm here to speak for when things go right. In Fulton County, for the last 30 years that I have been here in the Fulton County Police Department, every chief I've ever worked for, and I'm continuing the trend, have always stressed that every one of our officers is a community police officer. I was hoping that I didn't offend the chairman the other night when I answered one of his questions where he sent me a message and asked how many of my officers were community police officers. I responded, all of them. And that's a fact. That's the way I've been trained. That's the way every one of the officers that you see here has been trained, that we all represent not just Fulton County, but we represent law enforcement to the public each and every day, and that we should conduct ourselves in a manner that brings credit and brings honor to this profession while taking care of our public. How do we do that? One of the ways that we have done it for many years is we have a Citizens Police Academy every year, and it's always filled to capacity. We attend hundreds of community meetings. We attend dozens and dozens of meetings at places of worship and places of faith. We never, ever turn down a request to meet with members of the public, both business-wise, such as those out on Fulton Industrial and members of the CID out there, as well as Old National Highway, the Merchants Association, of which we have been a member since their inception. This last year, I announced that I was creating the county's first police athletic league to deal with one of the singular problems that all law enforcement is facing in this country, and that is a rising issue with youth crime and youth violence, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have given our youth very little alternatives. Over the years, things have been cut back, programs have been cut back, and our kids are left to just sort of fend for themselves too many times. So I've joined with our Parks and Recreation Department. I'm in discussions with a variety of people I'm not at liberty to say right now. We haven't signed the agreements, but some very exciting things coming forward this summer with our Police Athletic League. In addition, we have participated with the National Night Out program since its inception, and it will be, by the way, August 2nd, and it will be at the Crow's Nest on Old National Highway for those of you who wish to jot that down and attend. I think this year's will be one of the biggest we've ever had. We will be unveiling our plans for the Police Athletic League, and hopefully we will have some more information on that initiative at that time. But along with that, I think it's important for y'all to understand that the way officers are trained, and I'm going to speak about Fulton County because that's what I know the most of. The way officers are trained to de-escalate encounters is most important. We have been ahead of that curve long before it was popular to say de-escalation. Treating folks and recognizing that some folks have mental issues and dealing with it appropriately, meaning you don't necessarily get right up on top of them and confront them when you see and recognize certain signs. We have been trained for these issues for a long, long time. The training is continuing. We're not doctors, we're not psychiatrists. You must understand that. We're law enforcement, but we can help de-escalate. I saw some comments on the news in reference to some of the protests that have been going on around the country. One of the comments that was made is calling for restraint from law enforcement and restraint from the protesters. I agree. All of us need to understand that you cannot have a dialogue if the dialogue is violent. You cannot have a dialogue if the dialogue is shouting. Nobody wins in that forum. So I'm calling on all of our officers, and I've done it in writing this week, to exercise extreme restraint while not putting your life in danger, to exercise professionalism, compassion, empathy. We're human beings. Our families live in this community. We live in this community. Folks need to understand it's not just a badge. We are people behind the badge. Thank you, Chairman.
I want to once again thank the Chief for his outstanding leadership, and I want to stress that we have brave men and women who are out on the streets every day protecting our communities, protecting our homes, protecting our lives, and so we want to support our law enforcement. I also want to point out one other thing that we as a county, we do that I think is perhaps a positive thing that other jurisdictions around the county can do. We have a race-based reporting mechanism in which we ask our law enforcement, whether it's police, the sheriff's department, marshals, to report to the Board of Commissioners on a periodic basis the number of arrests and the demographic breakdown of those who are arrested. And if there are any deviations that occur, we as a board, we try to do what we can to hold our law enforcement accountable to make sure that there is no evidence of racial profiling. As I pointed out, the chief has done a lot in terms of, with his team, of community policing. And one of the venues that we use in terms of community policing is our strong and vibrant faith-based community. We have strong members of the Jewish faith, the Islamic faith, the Christian faith, among others. And so today we have two representatives who are very, very strong in our community in terms of being leaders of their respective congregations. We also have an interfaith council that hopefully will be used as a conduit to encourage more dialogue in which the faith-based community is a part of this dialogue. So today we have Pastor Russell of the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Atlanta. He will share with you what he is doing, followed by Pastor Russell. We'll have Iman Jabber, who will talk about what the Al Farouk Mosque is doing as well. So, Pastor Russell.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Eves. The Berean Church is having on July 23rd its third in a series of dialogues on Know Your Rights, as well as trying to do a deep dive in looking at some of the proactive steps that a community can take in terms of building this necessary and healthy relationship between law enforcement and the community. Thus, we're going to take it a little deeper this time. On our panel this time will be law enforcement, people from the community, but one of the added increments this time or aspects we will deal with is to recognize of the 800-pound gorilla or elephant in the room, and that is the whole issue of the overarching problem of race perceptions of all of this. And so we're looking at a very diverse form this time of just looking at this huge divide where we peer at each other across the divide racially and saying, how do we deal with that as well? Because we saw in the events of the last week that in the African American community, we were certainly demonstrating and pretty angst over the fact of what happened both in St. Paul as well as Baton Rouge and across the country. But there was seemingly a silence from my brothers and sisters from the majority community. And of course, we saw what happened in Dallas, that on Thursday evening, when that occurred, there was a hue and cry from the majority community about things. And so we saw this divide that we all have our pet issues emotionally and viscerally that we respond to. But the thing is, how do we bridge that divide to have even though we have our perceptions that are filtered through our background, how do we do it in such a way that we heal that divide that is such an apparent and integral part of our culture right now? So we're going to do a number of things, but coming out of it, what are those proactive, action-oriented steps, solution-oriented steps that we can take as we go forward? Looking forward to doing that on July 23rd at our church, the Berean Seventh Adventist Church, 291 Hamilton E. Holmes at 6 o'clock on that Saturday evening.
Before Iman Jabber comes forward, I want to acknowledge my friend Judy Marks, who's the Executive Director of the Atlanta American Jewish Committee. Okay, Interfaith Community Initiatives. Judy is a good friend, is also a member of the Jewish community. So thank you for being here. You're welcome to come down as well. Iman Jabber.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. On behalf of the Al Farouk administration, I just want to share with you a few of the things that we are doing right now. The foundation of the actions that Al Farouk will be taking along with other mosques throughout Atlanta is based on education, because through ignorance comes evil. And if you're able to eradicate ignorance and educate people on how to deal with one another. So what we are talking about to our communities, and we're encouraging other mosques and other faith-based leadership to come forward and address the crowd, is based on what the Quran, the Word of God, teaches us. The Quran talks about Moses, and this is the story that we are, repeating over and over again to our congregations. The Quran talks about the story of Moses, and although he was dealing with a very evil and uncultured man, the Pharaoh, God tells him to go engage, and as the chief has mentioned, dialogue. And dialogue doesn't come out of hate, because we know very well fire doesn't put out fire. We know you need water. You need the opposite. So if there is hate and misunderstanding, you need understanding. If there is hate, you need love to suppress it. So what we're talking about is Moses going into the court of Pharaoh, and God tells him that, look, although he is an evil man and his doings are wrong and evil, but address him politely. Because if there is any chance of him accepting what you say, it's when you address him politely. God is teaching us, don't react. Learn how to respond. So we want to encourage our communities to respond in a manner that will be fruitful. There will be fruition from that. So in that, we are planning to work with other faith-based communities, with law enforcement, to bridge gaps, teach people what are your rights, how to deal with situations. So with that, we are going back and saying that, look, hard times come, difficult times come, but the solution is not hate. The solution is not to react. The solution is to understand situations and learn how to deal with it in a manner that is fruitful and beneficial for everybody. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all the members who are present. Come on, Judy. Judy, again, is with the
Faith Community Initiatives. Thanks. Thank you for inviting me up, Chairman Eves, and nice to see you. Interfaith Community Initiatives is an organization that brings together people who are different. I know in this day and age that's kind of a remarkable thing to say, because we tend to hang out with people who are just like us. We tend to hang out with people who we only agree with. We tend to hang out and listen to the news and pay attention to people who just confirm the way we feel. And we have, since 2002, for the past 14 years, brought together Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, anyone that was interested in talking and learning how to talk to people that are different than themselves. What more do we need in this world today than that? I'm really delighted to be here and be part of the Commission's initiative to learn how to talk civilly to each other, how to disagree agreeably, how to agree, and how to find places of agreement, and how to manage the places of disagreement. So we look forward to working together and bringing people who are not normally seen in the same room like this together again. Thank you.
And last but not least, the rally that was held, I believe, on Friday was organized by the NAACP, the longest, the oldest, one of the largest civil rights organizations in the United States. And so we have a representative from the NAACP. If you can come forward, sir, and greet the group. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Richard Rose, president of the Atlanta branch of NAACP. And I'm happy to be here because I want to emphasize that we should examine how we got here to this place to understand what's going on. There's always been difference in strategies in the civil rights movements from the 60s when I started and throughout. Even Dr. King was against the Freedom Riders. So we're going to have differences. But we have to know and recognize that we are here because of 150 years of post-emancipation oppression that affected job opportunities, education opportunities, and we got legacies of poverty. And people are frustrated, they're outraged. And our political leaders and other leaders, such as myself, need to communicate that we understand the rage, we understand the situations, and we want to work on solutions. But they have to be long-term solutions because these are long-term, deep-seated problems. America has never repudiated white supremacy. Just miles from here, Stone Mountain is the largest shrine to white supremacy in the history of the world. And until we recognize how we got here and talk about how we got here and admit our deficiencies, all of our deficiencies, then we're going to continue to have situations where we cannot control. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I also want to acknowledge that we have the police chief of Palmetto, Chief Mundy. Thank you so much for being here as part of this collective effort. So ladies and gentlemen, again, this is a diverse coalition of folks who are committed to making sure that we enhance public safety, that we facilitate dialogue. We want to acknowledge the concerns that have been addressed, raised by members of our community who are upset and frustrated, and perhaps in some ways rightfully so. I'm proud of our police department in Fulton County. but we also are always open to dialogue and looking at ways that we can be even better to ensure that we are the beloved community, the home of Martin Luther King today and in tomorrow. So ladies and gentlemen, having said all of that, we certainly open the floor for any questions that anyone have. Yes, Dave.
Mr. Chairman, you want to dialogue, you want to talk with various groups. Is it appropriate to reach out to some of those organizations, Black Lives Matter, and also to follow up with the Chief, if I could, Chief Stiles. Chief Turner says, his officers are working 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off. He's worried about fatigue with those officers. Would this be a situation where you would maybe step in and help in Atlanta as well? Those two questions.
Sure. So to your first question, I think it is appropriate. I think it's we're a diverse community. There's a segment of our community that is frustrated. I think as elected official, I should always have an open door policy. There is a way that we can always adjust as the police chief and his team go out to community groups and hears suggestions from constituents. We may sometimes tweak our practices. And so I'm very much willing to listen. I've been in touch with the influencers, representatives of the influencers, as well as Black Lives Matters. There's some great things the county is doing already that people are not aware of in terms of criminal justice reform. We've reduced our jail population, our bookings by 30% over the past 5 years, which I think is very noteworthy. So the point is, I think we can always listen to their concerns to make some tweaks to be better, but we also think it's important for us to communicate to our constituents the good things that we're doing already that are addressing concerns that are being raised. Chief?
Regarding your question as far as... Thank you. Regarding your question as far as assisting City of Atlanta, the Fulton County Police Department will stand ready to assist any police department in the region that requests our assistance, and of course we would be glad to assist if Atlanta needs us. We've had elements on standby off and on during the past few days, so certainly we would.
Thank you, sir.
There was a question over here. I can't quite see with the lights.
Chairman Eves or Chief Stiles, I've been at some of the protests the last couple of days, and you talk to some people that are outraged and frustrated, as you say. They can give you specific things that they want to see change, but then you talk to a large portion of the people, and you get the sense maybe there's protesting to protest. They can't give you specifics of the change that they want through the community policing or meetings that you have. Are there some specifics that rise to the top that you hear that people in the community want to see change?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I've heard the whole realm in terms of specifics that are really more prominent nationally as opposed to locally, and then I just hear some emotionalism as well. I think it's important, though, just to have the dialogue, to acknowledge that there is a hurt that some people have, whether it may be legitimate or not. I think we need to acknowledge it and to listen. And as I pointed out earlier, there's always room for improvement. I'm proud about what the county has done in terms of law enforcement. Yeah, I can give us an A, but that doesn't mean that we can't be an A+. And so I think there's certainly a spirit and a willingness to be open and to have dialogue, as you heard from our members of our faith-based community as well. Chief, you want to add to it?
In dealing with the community in South Fulton County, as an example, the number one plea from them for the last, 14, 15 months has been they want to see more of us. We enjoy an extremely positive relationship, and it's something that we have worked very hard for a number of years. But when issues come up, and issues always will come up, we address them immediately as an individual issue. If it's a single officer issue, if it's a policy issue, we address it immediately. And we do that because we understand that life is fluid, things change, people's attitudes change, and we need to, in many cases, change with them.
Chairman Hughes, I wanted to ask you, Andrew Young had called some of the protesters, I think the quote was, unlovable little brats, and you talked a little bit about creating divisiveness, or combating divisiveness, and I just wanted to get your reaction. What do quotes like that say? I mean, certainly some protesters are better than others, but, you talked about needing to create a dialogue to work together.
So first of all, I tremendously respect Ambassador Andrew Young, and so I'm not going to criticize his comments. I do think that it's important for us to acknowledge, you can't ignore what's occurring when you have 11,000 people show up for a protest. You can't ignore it. And I think that there is benefit and there's prudence in having a dialogue, as members of our faith-based community have already talked about. And I just want the public to know, getting back to Dave Huddleston's question, I see a benefit in me as an elected official. I was elected by people within a very diverse county. I see some benefit in me having some open dialogue. And I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to do what I can to inform and to corral those energies that are being displayed in a very productive way, not a counterproductive way. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
There is a segment of the population that doesn't get it. They don't understand why these people are protesting. It doesn't affect them. They may live in North Fulton County. They may live in some parts of South Fulton County. And they just don't understand what's going on and understand why all these people are protesting. How do you engage them into understanding what's going on to be part of the solution?
I think that's a great question. And I think that's where the faith-based community can step in. And so not only do you have the work of the Al Farouk Mosque as well as Berean, I'm a member of the temple, and Rabbi Peter Bird is having dialogue about race, and he's tapping into, as well as others, tapping into this other population who may not necessarily get it, may or may not necessarily be roused to do something, may not necessarily be roused to protest, but I think we all recognize that we don't want to have this to happen, and we all recognize that we want to have a safe and a vibrant community. So I think that the faith-based community can play a significant role. And so one of the things I want to convey is, just as you have representatives here today, others, churches, mosques, temples, et cetera, they can be a part of this effort in terms of having dialogues within their congregations as well as on the periphery of their congregation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Law enforcement community, thank you so much for all you're doing every day to protect our communities. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Mic test. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic test. DJ Larry Mac in the house.
1, 2, 3, mic check. 1, 2, 3. No? Nothing?
Probably as busy as you stay, of course.
1, 2, 3, testing. Yeah?
Good morning. We are gathered here today to update everyone on the protest over the weekend and to keep our residents briefed about our ongoing efforts to monitor these public assemblies and to protect all of our citizens, our visitors, and the property of the public. I want to thank all of the Public Safety Department, the Department of Corrections led by Chief Pat Labatt, our Fire Department led by Chief Baker, and our Police Department led by George Turner for their extraordinary work during these very, very tense and delicate times. It's been a tough week for all of America, following the shooting deaths of black men in Louisiana and Minnesota, and the horrible deaths of the 5 police officers who were shot in Dallas, Texas. These tragedies have reverberated across the United States of America, and our city is no exception. For the last 3 days, thousands of people in Atlanta have acted on their constitutional right to gather in protest and march on our city streets. At the same time, our city has also kept its duty to responsibly and safely monitor these protests, maintain the well-being of everyone involved, our officers and the individuals who are choosing to protest. As a part of our response, the Atlanta Police Department canceled all off days, went on 12-hour shifts, and had every available officer, including administrative officers, working to keep the protesters safe and to keep the city of Atlanta safe. And for that, they deserve an extraordinary amount of credit for their good work. The Public Safety Joint Operations Center was opened nonstop throughout the weekend, and the Atlanta Police Command Bus was operational during the protests. APD will likely maintain 12-hour shifts until we know if the nature of the protests has changed. Simply stated, we will remain vigilant. Officers and staff have now worked approximately 6,000 hours in overtime to protect the demonstrators and the residents and guests of our city. I'm proud to say that APD has received overwhelmingly favorable response in various forms in the news articles about their professionalism and the demeanor they maintained with the protesters as they asserted their First Amendment rights. I also want to thank the commander of the Georgia State Patrol and Governor Deal for their assistance over the last 3 days. It has been absolutely invaluable. I also want to thank their officers for their temperament and the restraint that they have shown and the collaborative way that they have worked with the Atlanta Police Department. I believe that our officers have done an exceptional job. In some cases, they have had bottles of water thrown at them and obscenities and insults shouted at them repeatedly for hours on end. Yet they have remained calm and professional. But they're also exhausted, and I'm asking our residents and the protesters to once again let them know that they are appreciated and to support them. We really cannot forget that just days ago in Dallas, they watched 4 of their counterparts in Dallas and 1 person from the Rapid Transit Systems Police Department be massacred in the streets. So think about that. Every single officer on the Atlanta Police Department has a family and somebody who cares about them the same way you do. And there are such things as copycats. So when our officers are out on the streets in droves, providing protection for your protest, the very least that we can do is to treat them with the dignity and respect that they deserve and the dignity and respect that you are asking for during your protest. On Friday night, our community demonstrated leadership. More than 15,000 people in total over the last 3 days came to march, including families, representatives from countless community organizations, and dozens of faith leaders. The overwhelming consensus was that the event was peaceful and largely positive. I believe it's a testament to both our officers and Atlanta's residents Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday and through the weekend. As the weekend wore on, we saw a different kind of protest on both Saturday and Sunday nights. We weren't seeing families marching anymore. We were seeing a different kind of activists and people unaffiliated with community organizations that we are aware of, and this has caused a concern for us. As a result, our officers were forced to make additional arrests Saturday and Sunday, 11 on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. 2 additional arrests on Saturday were made by the Georgia State Patrol. So I want to keep in mind, now after more than 3 days of protest, after having 15,000 people protest in the city of Atlanta, between the Atlanta Police Department and the Georgia State Patrol, less than 25 individuals have been arrested. I also want to state emphatically, once again, that we will not allow protests to interfere with traffic on our interstates. It is unacceptable. It creates a risk that we will not tolerate, that is bad for the protesters, that is bad for our law enforcement personnel, and it's bad for the innocent motorist who is trying to make it home or to work or wherever they may be traveling. For the safety of our officers and our residents, the protesters, and we want to make this message very, very clear as we go into this evening. So once again, I ask the protesters, you may continue to protest, not you may, it's your right to, but please continue to do so in a peaceful fashion. I also want to thank Ambassador Andrew Young for taking the time to speak to police officers over the weekend and for lending his great perspective on organized protest and encouraging them in their duty. And I would remind individuals out there that Ambassador Young actually was involved in these marches and was at Edmund Pettus Bridge and has greater knowledge than anyone that I know of about what went into peaceful protest. I also want to remind all of the residents of Atlanta that during this time, which demands so many public resources, that we will not fail to fulfill our obligation to you as well. So let's continue to show respect for one another. Let's make sure that we continue to show the best version of ourselves. And with that, I would like for Chief Turner to give you some insight into our work over the last 3 days. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you guys for being here. I just really want to, first of all, just thank our officers and the troopers who have endured an amazing amount of work over the weekend through extreme heat. And so they've done a great job representing the city of Atlanta. And then just a list of partners who have been in our Joint Operations Center throughout the weekend. First, as the mayor talked about, our Georgia State Patrol partners, Colonel McDonough and his team have done a great job in support of what we've been trying to do and provide for the democracy of our citizens and protesters. MARTA Police Department with Chief Dunham and her staff, the GBI, GSAC, Georgia Tech, Georgia National Guard, GEMA, the Georgia Emergency Management, Atlanta SEMA, Atlanta Fulton County Management Association, then the State Department of Correction and Grady MS. And then our internal partners, the Mayor's Administrative Office. They've been extremely supportive. Dan Gordon, our COO, has been extremely supportive throughout this weekend, as well as the fire partner, Chief Baker, and our corrections partner, Chief Labat and his team, AIM, our law department, and Park and Recreations, as well as our amazing APD command staff. So with that, I just have a few comments I'd like to make. I just want to reiterate what the mayor said. As you continue to demonstrate, if you choose to, want to encourage you all to continue to do that with respect and peace, and understand that you need to obey the laws and the instructions of law enforcement. And then finally, we want to encourage conversations and dialogue about what we're doing in the Atlanta Police Department with anyone that would like to sit down and have constructive conversations about the actions of this department, and we can talk about the national conversation around officers and citizens encounters. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Don't worry about it. Now open it up for any questions that you may have.
The conduct of police officers, when anyone gets exhausted, their patience can run low, their emotions and frustrations can get high when they're exhausted. Does that concern you?
It does. It's why we're having this conversation right now. Our office has been working nonstop, and so I would just ask the protesters not to create a situation on either side of the coin that you're protesting about. I mean, I think that our officers have shown extraordinary restraint, but I can tell you as somebody who was actually in that crowd, among the protesters, hearing what was being said, looking at the treatment that our officers were receiving, that it is of grave concern going into the 4th and 5th day of this, the toll that it's taken on our law enforcement personnel. I also ask the public to please take into account that our officers just saw their colleagues slaughtered, set up, and assassinated. And there are such things as copycats. And so they have the job of managing the protest, but they also have the job of protecting the protest because every time there is a different occurrence, our team reviews it and then has to figure out how to respond if such an occurrence came again. And so that's why I'm going to continue to communicate, talk to the protesters. The other point, Morris, I want to make is this. I was out on Friday, and that there were a number of college students, and that was very encouraging to me because so many important parts of the civil rights movement many years ago came out of the Atlanta University Center, as you know. But these folks need to remember that we were working very hard not to give an entire cadre of young people an arrest record, right? If we had started making arrests of these young people, we would have been contributing to the very pathology that we're talking about, and that is giving young black people arrest records, which in this day and age of technology is going to be found out by a future employer, which then makes it more difficult for you to be employed. And so I ask that you all consider the humanity that was shown, both by the State Patrol and both by the APD, in doing everything we could to refrain from arresting you. But all things have their limits. All things have their limits. And it's going to be very important that as we get through this in the next days and weeks, that we turn toward each other and treat each other with great dignity, great respect, and great restraint.
Mayor,
Yes, I'm going to take this young lady here and
You
there.
had said that the 12-hour shifts would continue until the nature of the protest changed. Can you explain, what do you mean by the nature of the protest? Have they been turning more violent over the past couple of days, or?
No, but the size of them, how many different situations we have to monitor. On one day, we were monitoring 6 different situations. So that requires a different kind of force and a different kind of flexibility. If we are monitoring 1, then that changes. That means that we can give our officers relief. But because these things can move in a different direction quickly, we have taken the posture that we wanted to be ready to deal with an array of challenges at one time. So that's what I meant by that statement.
Mayor, you
Yes, in the center.
From the organizers of these protests, what it is they want. You sat down and asked them, what do you want us to do? What do you want to see change? We're seeing a lot of demonstrations, but they're not really saying exactly what they want.
The answer to that is not really. We're going to try to discern that over the next few days and to meet with a leader. It has been very difficult to determine where there is a leader. So, for example, I met with 2 gentlemen from Morehouse who actually wanted to write a plan and present it to the city to help police officers interact with college students more. So that seemed reasonable to me, and I hope when I get to my office in a little bit that I'll have an email from those young people today. But they were in the protest. They were from Morehouse College. I invited them to get in my vehicle and speak with me, and they did. And they had some substantive things to say. But what I shared with them and what I shared with the protesters now is, don't condemn my department for what you feel about something else that's going on in another city. Our officers and our department isn't perfect, But on the substantive measures, we have been moving in the right direction. And we, 99% of the time, do what we're supposed to do. And so don't take your anger about another incident in another part of America, which we need to address, and place that imprint on our women and men. If you have a problem with us, if there's something specific we have done that you don't like, I will have a conversation about that, because I believe that bad officers need to be dealt with decisively to protect the 99.9% of the officers who wake up and do what they're supposed to do every day. My sense is that the Chief Turner feels that way as well. So if you have something that you want to talk about, let's talk about it. The other thing that we need to continue to push back on is this urban legend that's trying to be created around what happened, that awful hanging in Piedmont Park. What I said to the young people the other night is, what do you want me to do differently? Within 4 hours, we turned that case over to the FBI. I am not going to disclose the identity of that individual until I've communicated with their family. The KKK was not in Piedmont Park passing out literature. You know, so the challenge of social media is, I mean, even before social media, a lie got around the world before the truth got out of bed, right? I don't know what's faster than that. But that's what I'm seeing in social media right now, and it's flat out incorrect. And we all have an obligation when we see things like that that are used to inflame crowds and protesters. Don't inflame crowds and protesters with a lie. Right?
Mayor, you talked about the man-hours spent and how exhausted officers are. How long can officers keep on these 12-hour shifts, and what is the cost to taxpayers?
I'm confident that we can continue to do what is necessary over the next week. The cost to taxpayers we won't know, but once this is over, at least normalized, we will do a complete report of what was spent. I do know the number of person hours that have been put in, but we will definitely report out in a transparent fashion on what this has cost. But we are sparing no resources, because the safety of the protesters and the safety of our officers is paramount. And so this is not a situation where we're going to cut corners.
So beyond the week then, you said we can go another week. What happens? Are you going to have to call in help?
No. At the end of another week, we would evaluate our situation and put all options on the table. And I would go to my command staff and ask for recommendations. And they would provide me with those recommendations, and we would execute on them.
Can the National Guard be an option?
The National Guard is certainly an option, although it's not an option that I prefer. I think
because the troopers got to be tired too.
I understand. I think the current configuration is the right configuration that has worked well for us. Let's keep in mind 15,000 protesters over 4 days, 25 arrests. I think that model is probably the best model for as long as we can maintain it.
Mayor, are you considering a curfew?
I'm certainly considering it. I'll be meeting with my senior team at 12:30 today to get recommendations on additional steps we need to take. I did want to give our chiefs an opportunity to visit after this press event before they meet with me this afternoon and give me advice.
Chief Turner, can I ask a question of you?
Absolutely.
You spoke about tweaking your strategy after what happened in Dallas. I know you don't want to give out your plan due to safety reasons, but can you give us some insight on the tweaks that you made and how it worked out during these last 3 days?
Well, I think you really saw the changes as we tweaked our plan. We were a lot more overt in certain areas, and then we were covert in others. We had more people in plainclothes monitoring, more people that was doing more intelligence gathering so that we could make right decisions. We have continued to provide resources to deal with issues as they pop up with the right kind of responses.
You've seen some protests happening inside buildings within Atlanta, Lenox Square, at the airport over the weekend. Are you getting a heads up that those protests are about to happen?
Absolutely. We have a phenomenal network of information coming in through our GSAC partners, FBI partners, and our own intelligence officers that are on the ground, as well as monitoring other means. And so we believe also that our network of cameras have given us insight that we wouldn't have had previously. We have more than 7,500 cameras that are fully engaged into one centralized location that give us the kind of viewpoint that we need as people are moving throughout the city. I will also say this, the helicopters through the Georgia State Patrol as well as the Atlanta Police Department provide us with the kind of visual that we need to deploy appropriately resources. Let me just make one point. If anyone in this room perceived that this mayor would protect the Ku Klux Klan, I think that would be a really horrible joke if you think that that would be the case. We've not had any kind of report or confirmed any report that the Ku Klux Klan was in our park. So I'll just say it that way.
Chief Turner, last week you talked about, excuse me, not wearing the tactical riot gear that we've seen in some other cities.
Yes.
What kind of a difference do you think that makes?
I think we've seen, and of course, you guys have been out there in the streets. I think that the reaction that our protesters react to when we are just showing up in our uniform, what kind of action that's dictating the response of the protesters. And so I believe less is best until we need to step in, and that method has benefited us over the last 4 nights. I'm confident that we have resources available to be able to mitigate any situation that occur. We have a tremendous partnership that's operating, and we've been able to move those resources around throughout the weekend, and we'll continue to do that as long as necessary.
What and where are you anticipating today, this afternoon, this evening?
Well, Mars, you probably have access to the same information that we have, and I'm not going to talk about the protest, but I'll just let you know for sure that we're monitoring several protests that are scheduled, and we'll be prepared to try to mitigate any actions that take place on those.
Other cities smaller than us, like Boston, get more money from the federal government for counterterrorism and security issues. Are we getting enough support from the feds for events like this, which they could help?
Well, I would just say this. We have had some robust conversations both at the Senate and the Congress talking about the Homeland Security budget. I'm confident that we'll have the right kind of support to try to push back from the reductions that was recommended earlier in the year.
It seems like policing is changing day by day. We saw in Dallas for the first time a robot bomb. I had not seen that before. Had you seen that? What are your thoughts on that? Do we have something like that? Would we use something like that?
Well, I'll just say this. We have a robot that we operate through our SWAT and our DED team. We have the capability to do just that. But the fact is, you have to think through this whole process. Chief Brown and his leadership team, through the mayor, they felt that that was the only way to mitigate that circumstance. After several officers had been shot, slain, this individual was extremely tactful. After meeting and coming to a conclusion that was the only way that they could eliminate that threat. I wouldn't ever think about second-guessing another police chief in a situation that he found himself in. I will say this, that our capacity under this administration, we have grown our SWAT capabilities, the ability to have more officers that are armed in the right fashion with long weapons. I think that because of the resources that have been made available to the Atlanta Police Department over the last 7 months since November 13, 2015 has been absolutely amazing. And the truth is, the majority of those dollars have been supported through this administration, through the general fund, without any federal funds. And we've done that on the dime of the city taxpayers. And so we've had to have a tremendous amount of support from the mayor as well as the council to confirm those kind of spends.
Chief, when you see the weapon that was used in the Dallas attack similar to an AR-15, how do you feel and police here feel that a weapon like that is accessible and legal?
Well, I have personally talked about the challenges with long rifles and high-capacity magazine weapons in urban settings. I am not a supporter of legalizing and having those weapons available in urban cities. I think that we have to look at weaponry in two different facets. Clearly, in an urban setting, it's tremendously different than a rural setting. When we have people literally living on top of each other, the last thing I believe that we need to have is that kind of high-capacity weapon having access to that inside of cities. We have had to rethink about the way we police because of the access of those kind of weapons. All of our deployments concerning SWAT and long rifle deployments in our department really became necessary because of the firepower that we're encountering on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to thank Councilmember C.T. Martin for being here today and express my gratitude for his leadership on issues related to public safety. Thank you so much, Council. All
Very
right.
quickly, did you have any comment on the officer who was fired, you learned over the weekend after the shooting at the Monroe Place location?
Yeah, I don't have any comment on him, but that he was fired. Thank you.